Bigfoot encounter at Timber Creek Cabin. Please keep my name anonymous. In the dense woods of West Virginia, my small rustic cabin stood isolated from the world. For the sake of protecting the creature from harassment, I've chosen to use the name Timber Creek instead of the real location. It was a chilly autumn evening, the air thick with the scent of pine and decaying leaves. I had decided to spend the weekend there, hoping to catch a break from the bustle of city life. I was accompanied by my loyal dog, Max, a large German shepherd with a keen sense for danger. The first night passed uneventfully, with the only sounds being the crackling of the fireplace and the occasional hoot of an owl. I enjoyed the solitude, reading a book by the fire and sipping on a cup of hot coffee. Max lay by my feet, occasionally lifting his head to listen to the distant sounds of the forest. As the night wore on, I decided to turn in, feeling at peace in the quiet of the wilderness. The next day was spent exploring the nearby trails and taking in the beauty of the changing leaves. The vibrant reds, oranges, and yellows painted the landscape in a breathtaking display. Max ran ahead, sniffing and investigating every nook and cranny, while I followed at a leisurely pace, soaking in the tranquility. By late afternoon, we returned to the cabin, tired but content. As evening fell, I stoked the fire and settled in for another quiet night. I had just started reading when I heard a series of low, guttural noises coming from the forest. Max, usually calm and composed, perked up his ears and growled softly. I paused, listening intently. The sounds were unlike any animal I had ever encountered in my years of hunting. Grabbing my flashlight, I cautiously stepped outside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but trees and shadows. The noises persisted, now sounding closer. It was a mix of grunts and what seemed like distant, heavy footsteps. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I scanned the tree line, feeling an overwhelming sense of unease. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the night, coming from the side of the cabin. I whipped around, pointing my flashlight in the direction of the noise. There, standing at the edge of the clearing, was a massive figure covered in dark, matted hair. The creature stood at least 8 feet tall, its eyes glowing a menacing red in the reflection of the light. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Max barked furiously, but the creature seemed unfazed. It let out a deafening roar, causing me to stumble backward. I quickly regained my footing and dashed inside, slamming the door shut behind me. My hands trembled as I locked the door and secured the windows. I could hear the creature moving around outside, its heavy footsteps crunching the leaves. I grabbed my rifle, unsure if it would be enough to protect me. I peered out the window, but the figure had disappeared into the shadows. The sounds of the forest had changed dramatically. It was no longer the gentle rustling of leaves or the occasional chirp of nocturnal creatures. It was now a symphony of sinister noises that kept me on edge. A sudden thump on the roof made me jump. It sounded like something heavy had landed above me. I pointed the flashlight at the ceiling as if expecting to see through it. The thumping continued, moving across the roof, each step deliberate and heavy. I followed the sound with the beam of light, imagining the creature's movements above me. The thumping stopped, replaced by a scratching noise. It was faint at first, but grew louder as it moved toward the edge of the roof. I realized with a start that it was coming closer to the chimney. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it trying to get in? Was it curious? Or was it hunting? I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and fast, as I waited in the suffocating silence. Then, the chimney rattled, and a cloud of soot fell into the fireplace. Max barked loudly, his fur bristling as he faced the hearth. I aimed the flashlight at the fireplace, half expecting the creature to emerge from the shadows. After what felt like an eternity, the noise stopped. The creature seemed to retreat, its heavy footsteps receding into the forest. I exhaled a shaky breath, my body trembling with a mix of fear and relief. I stayed vigilant for the rest of the night, the rifle never leaving my grasp. When dawn broke, I cautiously stepped outside. The early morning light revealed large footprints around the cabin, confirming that what I saw was not a figment of my imagination. Each footprint was at least twice the size of my own, deeply embedded in the soft earth. I followed the trail for a short distance, but stopped when I noticed the prints leading into the dense forest. I decided to pack up and leave immediately. As I loaded my truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Max stayed close, his ears perked and eyes scanning the surroundings. The drive back to civilization was tense, with me constantly glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the creature following us. Upon returning home, I shared my experience with a few close friends. Their reactions were mixed. Some were skeptical, attributing the encounter to an overactive imagination or the tricks of the wilderness, while others believed me, sharing their own tales of strange occurrences in the woods of West Virginia. One friend in particular mentioned similar stories he had heard from his grandfather, who claimed to have seen the same creature decades ago. Despite the mixed reactions, I was convinced that the legendary Bigfoot was more than just a myth. I spent hours researching similar sightings and encounters, piecing together a chilling pattern. The stories were eerily consistent: massive, hairy creatures, glowing eyes, and an overwhelming sense of dread. Each account only strengthened my belief that what I encountered was real. I vowed never to return to Timber Creek Cabin, the memory of those glowing red eyes and the creature's deafening roar forever etched in my mind. The encounter changed me, making me more cautious and respectful of the unknown forces that lurked in the depths of the forest. I found myself looking over my shoulder more often, and the sound of snapping twigs in the woods sent chills down my spine. In the following weeks, I noticed subtle changes in my behavior. I was more alert and wary during my hunting trips, always scanning the surroundings for any sign of the creature. I installed additional locks and reinforced the windows of my home, a precaution I had never felt was necessary before. The encounter had instilled a deep-seated fear that I couldn't shake. One particularly restless night, I found myself awake at 3 a.m., unable to sleep. I sat on the porch, sipping a cup of tea, and gazed into the darkness. The memories of that night at Timber Creek Cabin replayed in my mind like a haunting movie. Max sat beside me, his presence providing some comfort, but the feeling of being watched lingered. I decided to reach out to a local cryptozoologist, hoping to find some answers or at least share my experience with someone who wouldn't dismiss it. Dr. Harris was an expert on unexplained phenomena, and he had spent years studying sightings of creatures like Bigfoot. He agreed to meet with me, intrigued by the details of my encounter. During our meeting, Dr. Harris listened intently as I recounted the events of that fateful night. He nodded thoughtfully, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "John, your story is not unique. There have been numerous reports of similar encounters in this region. While skeptics may dismiss them, the consistency of these accounts suggests there's something out there." Dr. Harris explained that the creature I encountered was likely a Sasquatch, a species believed to have evolved alongside humans, but remained hidden in the wilderness. He shared stories of other sightings, including one from a family in Oregon who had seen a similar creature near their cabin. These accounts, he believed, pointed to the existence of an elusive and intelligent species. Our conversation provided some solace, but it also raised more questions. Why had the creature approached my cabin? Was it curious, or was it trying to warn me? Dr. Harris speculated that the Sasquatch might have been drawn by the presence of Max, or perhaps by the scent of our campfire. Whatever the reason, it was clear that these creatures were not just legends. In the months that followed, I continued to grapple with the impact of the encounter. I joined an online community of people who had experienced similar phenomena, finding comfort in their stories and support in their shared fear. We exchanged tips on staying safe in the woods and discussed the latest research on cryptids. Though I never returned to Timber Creek Cabin, I couldn't entirely abandon my love for the outdoors. I chose safer, more populated areas for my hunting trips, always ensuring I wasn't alone. The forest, once a sanctuary, had become a place of mystery and danger. My experience had altered my perception of the world, making me acutely aware of the unknown lurking just beyond the trees. Years later, as I sit by the fire, I still think about that night at Timber Creek Cabin. The memory remains vivid, a reminder of the fragile boundary between the known and the unknown. While the encounter had instilled a deep sense of caution, it also ignited a relentless curiosity. The legend of Bigfoot was no longer just a tale. It was a part of my reality, forever etched in the annals of my life. Please email your stories to us at camptownscary@mail.com. We can't wait to delve into your frightening adventures and share them with our community.